2,000 years later.
It's coming. And you know it. You can feel it, deep in your soul. The Catholic Church, one of the most powerful and secretive institutions on earth, now stands on the edge of an abyss. When Pope Francis died, a silent whisper echoed through the darkness of the night. Inside the sacred halls of the Vatican, among the pillars of St. Peter's Basilica, cardinals, bishops, and hidden hands gathered. They do not seek truth. They seek power. They want to restore a true church, to crown a new savior, a new pope who will march the world back to what they call the true ministry of Christ. But the ancient prophecies have already been fulfilled. Francis was the last pope. The chain has broken, and now only judgment remains. What they cannot see is the great deception unfolding before their blinded eyes. In their desperate grasp for restoration, they are not saving the church. They are opening the gates for the false prophet. And when the last veil falls, it will not be salvation that arrives. It will be the return of the old gods.
Beneath the broken altars, the silent bride stirs. The black lead of ages shatters. From the ruins of creed, the golden child of dawn is born. The soul unchained, burning at the first true sight.
The night Pope Francis died, the earth did not roar with trumpets. There were no blazing signs in the sky. Only a cold, terrible silence fell over the world. A silence so deep it seemed creation itself was holding its breath. Inside the marble walls of the Vatican, the shadows grew longer. Beneath the ancient domes of St. Peter's Basilica, the sacred ground trembled with a secret only a few dared to whisper. The last pope was dead. Or so they said. The official story came swiftly, wrapped in ritual. Francis, the 265th successor of Peter, had died of a stroke on the morning of Easter Monday after collapsing into a coma, his heart surrendering in the early hours. But even in death, the contradictions whispered. Only a day earlier, he had appeared in St. Peter's Square. Frail, yes, but stubbornly alive, blessing crowds with the last reserves of his strength. Observers noted he did not respond to calls, his movements ghost-like, his vitality almost extinguished. Still, the Vatican insisted, this was a man full of spirit, fighting to the end. Then, just hours after the triumphant liturgies of Easter Sunday, the world was told he was gone. A perfect, providential symmetry, they said. A beautiful timing, they called it. A pope dying right after proclaiming the resurrection. But real eyes, searching eyes, saw something else. There were no open caskets. New Vatican protocols, quietly changed months before, forbade public viewing. The phrase uttered by high-ranking clergy, "He has returned to the Father's house," felt rehearsed, ambiguous, almost staged. Was it a simple euphemism for death, or a veiled reference to something more? To a house prepared, to a living retreat away from the collapsing scene? Some whispered he had not died at all, that Francis, worn by time and scandal, had been carefully removed, sheltered away, a figure discarded by those who now needed fresh blood to finalize the work he began. And if he had died, truly died, the manner of it still disturbed the soul. Some feared it was no stroke of natural causes, that when he had outlived his utility, forces within the Vatican, desperate to push forward, had ensured a swifter passage into legend. In a place where sacred and profane mix like blood and water, history is rarely written by nature alone. and so doubt festers. It wasn't just the passing of a man, it was the shattering of a chain that had stretched across centuries, linking earth to heaven. A chain now broken, leaving behind only fragments of an empire of faith. The prophecy of Saint Malachy had been fulfilled. Pope Francis, Peter the Roman, was the 112th and final pontiff. With his departure, a door closed forever, and another darker door began to creak open. Yet the cardinals, cloaked in crimson and ambition, refused to see the truth. They gathered, not to mourn, but to plot, not to pray, but to seize. In their desperation to resurrect the church they had already buried in compromise and betrayal, they unwittingly set the final pieces of the apocalypse into motion. Because whether Francis lives or dies, the result is the same. The structure he leaves behind is no longer a vessel of salvation. It is a stage for the final deception. The end of Francis is not the end of the tragedy. It is the beginning of the final act. And what rises now, behind closed doors, whispered conclaves, hidden alliances, is not a rebirth. It is a dark coronation. The true faith that once stood firm has already been poisoned from within. What remains is only the theater of a dying empire, its actors unaware that the final audience they perform for is no longer human. Not the salvation they crave, not the kingdom they think they rebuild, but something older, something far more patient, something reaching across the stars, returning to reclaim what was once theirs. The church believed it could master history, but history has never been theirs to command. Now, the reckoning has begun, and in the stillness between breaths, between faiths, between worlds, a darker power stirs awake.